Well, welcome to yet another episode of the Gritty Hour. I'm very excited to have our guest on today. I have Don Allison, who is a journalist who wrote a book called I Met a Ghost at Gettysburg. A Journalist's Paranormal Journey Continues. Anybody that knows me knows I'm sort of a Civil War fanatic, and specifically Gettysburg. So, welcome to the Gritty Hour, Don. We're honored to have you on board.
Oh, well, thanks for having me. Glad to
So,
be here.
you're a journalist by trade. You're in Ohio, correct?
Correct.
And you're a journalist by trade. I'm curious to know how you got involved both in the Civil War or Gettysburg from a journalist point of view. Journalists are supposed to be skeptical, so that makes me curious how you got involved in the first place.
I still am very skeptical. The Civil War, I had, excuse me, I had family on both sides during the war, ancestors. So I've been interested since I was just a kid.
Hmm.
Gettysburg held a really powerful interest for me, which was unusual because for a long time I didn't know that I had family at Gettysburg.
Mm.
The paranormal actually stems from the house that my wife and I are working to restore. We're living here now, but when we first took possession, it was in very rough shape. It's an 1830s house, and we worked on it for several years before we moved in. But we kept having these odd occurrences. We would hear the door open, and somebody walk in and walk up the stairs or walk down the hall or walk into the next room over, and or running around upstairs, and upon investigation nobody was there. I heard my name called. I had a young female voice whisper in my ears, and we had no power to the house because the wiring was not safe. So we used generators or battery powered tools and equipment.
When you first moved
And
in,
I
you
kept
told me.
having batteries die inexplicably. Radio stations would change while I was listening to the radio. CDs would turn off. Radios would turn off and on by themselves. I threw one radio away thinking the sawdust had ruined it from my work. The new one did the exact same thing.
Wow, that's very interesting. So you're still skeptical though. Why?
Very much so, because I think once people believe in the paranormal, they tend to, I think, sometimes stretch things and just accept something as paranormal because they can't explain it.
Hmm.
When often there is a natural explanation,
Hmm.
but not always.
Yeah.
Not always.
So that brings us to your book and Gettysburg in general. It just do you know where your ancestors fought or for whom?
Yes. When I wrote, started writing, I met a ghost at Gettysburg. I didn't know they were there at all, but my ancestors fought at Little Round Top,
Oh.
which ironically held a strong draw for me long before I knew that I had a family tie to that area.
Hmm. Do you know what regiment they were in, or?
Yes, they were all in the Alabama Brigade.
Oh, in the South.
Um, I
Okay.
had a I had a great great grandfather and a great 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 uncle in the 15th Alabama at Gettysburg. They fought against the 20th Maine,
Wow. So that under John
and
Bell Hood, I guess, right? Yeah.
they were in his division.
Yeah.
Colonel Oates was their commander. My great great grandfather was captured at Little Round Top, later escaped from Point Lookout, Maryland, and made his way back to his regiment. Would have loved to have met him.
Wow. Fascinating. I have two relatives also that fought for the 28th Pennsylvania on Culp's Hill. So it's a small
Oh,
world after
okay.
all. Yeah. So
Yeah.
so so do you remember the first time you were a kid when you first went to Gettysburg?
No, my first trip to Gettysburg was my honeymoon
Oh, interesting.
with my wife,
Oh
and
boy.
it was her idea.
Oh,
She
God bless her.
also has an interest in history.
Oh, very nice. Yeah. But anybody who first goes to Gettysburg or anybody who has already been there, you do feel a certain solemnity, a certain ambiance there when just standing there. You get that feeling. Probably not a
Yes, it,
paranormal feeling, but you do get a certain sense of the place when you're there. I'm sure you experienced that as well.
oh, very much so. Very much so.
Yeah. So tell me about how you met a ghost. What's the story behind that?
Well, my grandson accompanied me to Gettysburg on a spring break trip, and where he is was a baseball player at the time. We're both big baseball fans, and he had a choice between Lakeland, Florida, to watch the Detroit Tigers spring training, or to go to Gettysburg, and he chose Gettysburg.
Wow,
Now
interesting.
we went there for the history, not the paranormal, but I registered as a journalist to kind of get some behind the scenes access to
Mm-hmm.
make the trip worthwhile for him. And one of the things offered was a ghost investigation.
Mm.
And I thought this is a touristy thing, you know. So Connor, you want to do that? He said, "Yeah, Grandpa, that sounds pretty cool." He was 14 at the time.
You talking about one of those
So we
tours?
got it.
Yeah, one of those tours they
It
give on.
wasn't
Yeah.
it wasn't really one of the tours, although it was kind of like it, but we actually investigated. I mean, we had, equipment, we tried to get EVPs, we had electromagnetic field meters,
Oh.
had a ghost box.
Mm.
So and we went and we were taken to Sachs Bridge. And my initial reaction was, I don't want to go to Sachs Bridge. I've been there. I want to go somewhere like a field hospital, whatnot. Well, what we found out is Sachs Bridge was indeed, that whole area was one vast field hospital. That is where the worst of the wounded Confederates were taken
Uh
and
huh.
left if they weren't able to travel
Is that where
during
that
the
is that
retreat.
where that bridge is? That bridge over the stream there?
The covered
The
bridge
covered
that
bridge.
has
Yeah.
a reputation of being quite haunted.
I've heard that. Yeah.
Um, my initial experience, Connor and I's, was almost 2 hours of nothing. There were a lot of people there. We tried, EMF meters. We tried laser grids. We did get EVP will actually answer on a ghost box, and it was quite benign. The investigator, very knowledgeable young lady who filled us in on the history, but she said, "Can you tell us the coat any one of us is wearing?" And we did get a clear blue, and I did have a dark blue coat on, but
Mm.
that I was underwhelmed is a good way to
Mm.
describe it.
Sure.
Investigator kind of jumped and said she saw a shadow figure, which, yeah, okay, she seemed pretty sincere. My grandson later, when we were at the woods just off the bridge, had the same experience, and he obviously was quite startled, and he's not easily startled, but our investigation now is almost over. We've been there almost 2 hours. We have maybe 10 minutes to go. We ended up with the entire bridge to ourselves, and we started getting answers with the ghost box. Is anybody here with us? Yes. How many? 7, 8, 9. What year is it? 1863. And my initial reaction is, okay, how are they hoaxing us? They're trying to get a good write up from this journalist.
Mm.
And but the investigator seemed quite sincere. We got, some give and take, and it started to fade. Well, it's time to go. The investigator walked back. It was getting kind of cold. The investigator went back to start the car and warm it up. My grandson and I are sitting there, and I'm thinking, okay, she's gone. If there's anything to this, what would get the reaction of somebody, a soldier who would be here? So I said, "Do you like jokes?" And got a very clear yes from the ghost box.
Wow.
Okay. Do you like music? Well, of course. And there was almost an inflection to this voice, like I'd insulted him.
Mm.
And my grandson speaks up and says, "Can you play for us?" And absolutely. And we started getting acoustic guitar music. I couldn't
Wow.
identify the song, but not like a note or two, but measures. This was going for a while. The investigator turned off the car. I know it wasn't a radio or anything. It obviously is coming from the ghost box. She walked up and she heard that music and her jaw dropped and she is staring at this ghost box like, what is going on here? And this went off and on for a while. And finally, when it faded, I said, wow, you're good. The voice says, thank you. It says, can you play some more? Yes, sir. And it started playing this time at what sounded like a mandolin, and later a harmonica joined in. And I'm thinking, how can they fake this? You
Mm.
know, that this is just too much for that. How would they know we're going to ask for music? And how can they get it to fade in and out? And just, my mind's just whirling here. But then we started getting very clear answers, and the investigators started asking questions. Here, are you a soldier? Yes. So I started asking some questions. Are you Union or Confederate? What state are you from? And some of the answers weren't very clear, so we couldn't understand the states. So I started naming off states with troops there. When I got to Ohio, we got a very clear yes. And at that point, I had an EMF meter. My grandson did. Both of our meters went to the high level. These things had not so much as blipped the entire evening,
Wow.
and came back down. I'm thinking, whoa, how'd they do this? And anyway, we're asking more questions. The investigator says, can you give us your name? And we couldn't quite make it out, but it very clear 3 syllables, a very clear on sound in the middle, and a hard sound like something S, hard sound S at the end. And this, she kept asking, says, can you enunciate more clearly? And this kept continuing, like whatever this is really wants us to know this name. And I'm thinking, okay, if this is a hoax, why aren't they being more clear about it? It
Mm.
just, again, my mind's whirling. And ask other questions. And one of the things was, how old are you? And then I quickly asked, what unit are you in? And I should have allowed more time, but I'd never done an investigation before. We got 20 repeated, and then unsolicited the word captain.
Mm.
Wow, that's kind of interesting. And there was quite a conversation going. At one point, she asked how many are with us now, and the number was fewer, like 5 or 6. And finally, she asked, "Were you hurt?" And this really got to me. Even now, thinking about it, it was like a guttural scream of anguish, male scream, and then a woman crying. And that kind of took the wind out of our sails. About that time, a group came onto the other end of the bridge, and we heard them getting hits on a ghost box, and we left. Now, I peppered this poor young lady with questions all the way back. She said this was amazing. She'd never gotten music. It was her best ever investigation. When I got home, I was going to prove how we were hoaxed. Now, my grandson and I, when we got back to the hotel room that night, talked about this, and we wrote down our recollections so it would be fresh. I wish we would have recorded it, but I
I was
had no
that's
reason to
that's what I was going to ask you
before.
if there was an audio or video recording of it. No.
I really wish we had, and that was an option, but I thought, again, this was a touristy thing. I didn't think it was worth doing that too.
Mm-hmm.
But as I got home and started looking into it, and I also contacted the investigator and got her recollections down while it was fresh. But I started looking into things, contacting people, and people are saying, no, you can't broadcast to these things. This is how it works. You might go all night and get nothing. You might just get things for a little bit. Your session sounds pretty incredible, but not unheard of. I thought, okay, did any captains from Ohio die at Gettysburg, or were they mortally wounded? There were 7. One of them was Malin Briggs. 3 syllables, clear on sound, hard GS at the end. He was wounded badly. The first day, was captured, died the second day of the battle, quite likely was at Sachs Bridge as a POW when he died.
Mm.
That's where the title of the book came from. That, with my other experiences, just culminated in, okay, I need to address this.
Did the other captains, the other six, not have names that sounded like you what you thought you heard?
Nothing that even close to match. And he would have been the only one likely to have been taken to Sachs Bridge, also.
Hmm. Very interesting. So your skepticism did your skepticism wane after that, or?
It was waning before that, but that particular incident really made an impression on me.
Mm-hmm.
And we even found his photograph. The cover of the book has his photograph on the cover.
Yeah. So I should have
You know,
precluded this by
really.
saying Don is a journalist for a newspaper. Is it a newspaper out in Ohio?
Mhm.
So
I'm retired from that. I still do a column, but I was editor of the daily Bryan, Ohio paper for many years.
okay. So your skepticism is inbred.
Pretty
So
much,
yeah,
yeah.
it,
I'm
it,
a
it
product of the Watergate era.
yeah. Well, yeah. Though there you go. But that also amplifies the story you just told. Coming from your perspective, it gives it a little bit more pre- uh, credence. But I was gonna say, I'm gonna ask you how you got into, or what prompted you to write the book, and while you're doing that, I'm gonna share to the folks that are watching us on YouTube your your website to show where the book is, and so if you can just, yeah, it can just get us into how you got behind the project of writing the book and a subsequent book after that.
Yeah, I actually did not want to write the book. I started sharing some of my experiences at the house and at Gettysburg with coworkers. They were all encouraging me to write about it. My wife really twisted my arm, said, "You need to write about this." Finally, I did, and I thought it would be one book and done, but that opened an incredible number of doors to me. So I did a follow up book, and I am still very much involved in paranormal research and writing today.
Hmm. Well, the beauty of that is you were able to tie in your love of Gettysburg with your newfound fascination with the paranormal. So it makes perfect sense. Do you find yourself exploring the paranormal still? And do you confine it to
Yes.
Gettysburg, or are you expanding it in general?
No, I do investigations. I have some friends who host public investigations. I'll often help them, as I think those can be very good introductions to the general public to paranormal research.
Hmm.
In particular, my wife and I, excuse me,
Sure.
my wife and I have friends from the Detroit area who actually purchased the old Sanders farm at Gettysburg.
Oh,
It was a Confederate field hospital. They have the farmhouse and some of the surrounding acreage. And that is an incredibly active house and property. And they actually host public investigations for part of their income. And we will help them if we're in town. Um,
sure.
have
Well,
taken part in a lot of investigations there.
how often do you visit? You're in Ohio, so it's not down the block, but it's
Yeah.
not too far. How often do you visit Gettysburg?
It's about a 7 to 8 hour drive for me. Usually at least a half dozen times a year.
Mm-hmm. And do you go? I guess you also go. Do you go in November for the reenactment of the Gettysburg Address ceremony?
Sometimes I do. Yes.
Yeah, I've never been there for that. But do you believe in orbs?
Orbs are very controversial. Excuse me, controversial in the
Hmm.
paranormal field, and rightly so. I think more often than not, orbs are dust, insects,
Hmm.
pollen, and people tend to just accept them. But I am convinced from my own experience that orbs can be paranormal.
Mm.
Um, a series of photos in my first book were taken by my grandson on Little Round Top. And we stopped and just each took several pictures in succession to see if we would see anything. His first photograph, they're like seven orbs, and they look like they have tails, like they're shooting in our direction.
Mm-hmm.
And then right in front of the van, um, a mist begins and is larger with each successive photo.
Mm.
That I thought was pretty striking. My wife and I investigated at the site of the 107th Ohio's fight on the opening day. They're actually in the same brigade that Maitland Briggs, the Gettysburg captain, fought in the area where he was wounded. But there's nothing there. We're taking pictures, we're looking. Um, I started speaking out loud and used an EMF meter, asking if anyone was there, naming some names of soldiers from the 107th. And when I started doing that, the photographs started showing orbs.
Mm.
Wasn't there before. Um, so at one point, I had my EMF meter and I said, okay, I'm going to count to three. If you want us to know you're here, touch this box on the count of three and this needle will move. When I said three, the needle did indeed move. My wife took a photograph and I heard her behind me go, oh my God. She showed me the photo and there was a large orb right over the EMF meter. And it
Mm.
was between me and the 107th Ohio's monument. So you could place it, that it
Wow.
was not close to the camera lens.
Yeah. And not always, but in general, they always place those monuments around where the regiment fought. So that would have been right where they were during the
And
battle.
that one's pretty close to right where the 107th started the first day's fight.
Right. That would be. Well, I have two experiences. I don't want to give you in depth, but one of them was my nephew and I, my godson Christopher and I, would go to Gettysburg every July, pretty much for about 12 straight years. I've been there more than 20 years, but um, one time we stayed after the park closes, supposed to close at dusk. We stayed at the excuse me, the high water mark by the copse of trees to watch a fireworks display. It was on the 4th of July, and I think it was probably in Carlisle, I guess is where the fireworks are taking place. Um, but I took a shot of my nephew right next to one of the cannons at the high water mark, and it did come out with a series of orbs behind him, right behind him. I took it with a flash, so I was always wondering if that was a paranormal thing or just a part of the flash or dust on the camera lens. Who the hell knows? But I've always been curious about that. So you think there is some credence to it?
There can be, and oftentimes if you look closely, blow the photo up, look closely, and then compare. There are some great online studies of orbs and what can cause them, naturally, and you
Mm-hmm.
often can identify if they are indeed natural. Pollen may make, a certain pattern in the orbs, a certain look. Dust, an insect will show movement that kind of gives it away.
Right. That's why I was, I guess I'm as skeptical as you used to be or are. It's hard to say. My other experience, and he and I are both of Irish heritage, and for at least 4 or 5 of the first years we went, we were looking for that Irish Brigade Memorial, and for the life of us, we couldn't find it. We couldn't find it on the map. Look, using a map, couldn't find it. And then one time we were at a reenactment on a farm nearby the battlefield. And as the reenactment ended, we were leaving, you know, taking whatever that is, 30 west or whatever it was, 30 east. And a sheriff was directing traffic because there's a lot of traffic when the reenactment is over. And he was directing us back onto the battlefield. So I made a left onto the battlefields, and it felt like I wasn't operating the vehicle. It's like somebody else was steering the car. I was, left or right, going around a bend, and next thing you know, we're right in front of the Irish Brigade Memorial. It was a very strange experience for me. But that's my brush with the paranormal at Gettysburg. You know.
Well, there again, that heritage. I have Irish heritage as well.
Mm.
So
Well, we were glad to finally find it after 4 or 5 years going to Gettysburg. And anybody who hasn't been to Gettysburg, I don't know how many times you've been there, Don, but I've been there about 21 different times over 21 different years, and I don't think I've seen the entire battlefield yet.
I've been going there nearly 40 years, and I still have yet to see. Of course, that entire area is a battlefield as
Yeah,
well. All the surrounding, the town areas surrounding.
the town itself, yeah, just about every house on that main road there is was a hospital of some sort during and after the battle, for months after the battle. So, but it's quite the place, and I never really get tired of going. And so, what's in your future? Do you still feel like you need to explore the paranormal more, or do you want to just stick with your day job? Or
Well, I am actually, my wife and I operate a book publishing house. We stick with that,
hmm
but I have two more paranormal books on the horizon. They would be finished had it not been for the pandemic putting a halt. Some of the research that I need to do is at Gettysburg, and the archives were closed down.
right,
They are now reopened, so I'll be going back fairly soon.
right.
Um,
I s-
one book is focusing on the 107th Ohio, a German regiment.
mhm.
And it'll be a bit of a hybrid book because there's a lot of history to it, but there's also some paranormal because it was paranormal occurrences that led me to research the regiment.
Is that the one with Captain Briggs in it?
Well, they were in his brigade.
hmm
Malin Briggs was his Ohio unit was in the same brigade as the 107th,
I
and they
see.
fought on Barlow's Knoll. Regiments were adjacent
Oh,
to each other,
on
actually.
day one there.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
I've had a real pull to that area. I don't know of any family connection. It's because of odd occurrences, paranormal occurrences, that I discovered that my family fought at Gettysburg. I did
Mm.
not know for the longest time they did. And it was the paranormal occurrences that kept happening at and near Little Round Top that led me to start looking into things.
Right.
I had a number of Confederate ancestors. The ones I was aware of it all fought in the Western theater of the war.
hmm
But when I got to looking at some branches I had not investigated, that's when I found out that yes, I indeed had several ancestors there at the battle
Mm.
in the Alabama Brigade.
Yeah. For those of us watching us on YouTube, I'm showing the sequel to I Met a Ghost at Gettysburg, which is I Met More Ghosts at Gettysburg. Now, what is this? What does this book delve into? Have you had
It's
additional?
really a continuation. The best way I can describe these two books is it's my personal exploration and really, I guess, eye opening experiences that brought me into paranormal research.
hmm
I share my personal experiences, and the follow up book really deals a little more with the scientific explanations, theories, maybe is a better word, in connection with the paranormal, as well as my personal exploration into my family fighting. That's why the Alabama Brigade Monument is on the cover,
hmm
because that is where my family fought.
And it would be a good transition into the book you have in the works, the 107th Ohio, which was also fought on the first day. And I like the word you put underneath. Be willing to open your mind. Where would I find the cover of your first book? If you can just walk me through that. Is it
I'm
just all
trying
books?
to think of the best way
No, I
to
found it. I
get
got it.
with
Yeah.
that.
So
There
that
you found it. Yeah, I was looking to see which tab it was. So there you
yes.
go.
What? Where did you get the? How did you what? How did you get the design of the cover? What went into that, and who is that
Um,
fella?
I am I am very fortunate that my son is a graphic designer.
Ah, very good.
Um, and I have always enjoyed photography. I'm a trained photographer in photojournalism as well as my work as an editor and writer. I took the cover photo myself.
hmm
The person you see there is Malin Briggs, the Union captain that we had the ghost box experience with, is the best way I can describe it.
Hmm.
And they say my son did the design.
Wow. So you did find a picture of this gentleman, Captain Briggs. That's pretty
Yes,
impressive. Yeah.
doing some online research.
Where is that photo? Almost looks like the high watermark, but I can't really tell. Is that Seminary Ridge in the background?
It's on Cemetery Ridge, but it is would be, I'm just trying to think of the best way to describe how to get to it. If you are standing on the Union position
Mm-hmm.
from the high water mark, you would want to go south to your left
I gotcha.
along the
So
roadway, and that's
maybe a little in front of the Pennsylvania monument.
it's near the Pennsylvania Monument,
Yeah,
correct?
yeah. It's a nice
It's
shot.
between the high water mark and the Pennsylvania Monument.
Gotcha, gotcha. So, was it hard finding a photo of Captain Briggs?
Not really.
Mm-hmm.
I found it by researching his the brigade and his regiment, the 75th Ohio.
Mm-hmm.
And there's actually a website to the 75th Ohio, and the photos associated with that included the photo of Captain Briggs.
Mm.
And I was able to get permission to use it, obtain a copy, and get permission. Unfortunately, the original I've never been able to find. This was a copy photo
Mm.
of Malin Briggs, but it was good enough to use for the book.
Right. So in the book, which I'm looking forward to reading, do you, in, in addition to explaining some of your experiences with the paranormal, do you also explain your transition from a skeptical journalist into this field?
Very much so.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, that's probably the overriding theme of the book.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, how personal experiences dragged you into this field? Is that really what the thrust of it is?
That's very much, yes.
Mm-hmm.
And when I wrote I Met a Ghost, I thought that would be it. I was not intending to do anything further in the field.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but the book took off. It got me invitations to um, television appearances, to paranormal investigations with very talented people in the field.
Mm-hmm.
So I was able, it really, that book put me in a great position to be able to jump into this field
Mm-hmm.
and not have to really find my way, but to have very good mentors to guide
Mm.
me along.
In the paranormal, well, has these, I don't want to say the Civil War community, but the community of people who follow this, learn about the Civil War, have they reached out to you as well?
Yes, I have been invited to speak to numerous historical groups, Civil War roundtables, Sons of Confederate Veterans groups about the paranormal aspect.
Mm-hmm.
I do other what you call straight history of the war as well, and I am a frequent lecturer to groups about that. But the paranormal side of it has really gotten more acceptance than what I would have thought going into it, and that continues to increase. More and more mainstream scientists are starting to realize there's something here.
Mm-hmm.
And the other book I'm working on in the paranormal really has nothing to do with the Civil War, but it is the best available evidence for a continuation of consciousness after our death.
Mm.
And I focus on, instrumental transcommunication, EVPs, the ghost box,
Mm-hmm.
after death communication, near death experience. I mean, the evidence is really overwhelming in the field.
I'm going to assume after your experience on the bridge with Captain Briggs, you record everything now? Do you record
Um,
audio?
I, t- if I'm actually investigating, I do. One
Mm-hmm.
thing I have found that paranormal occurrences do not wait or cooperate with your investigation. Sometimes the best evidence you will get is when you are setting up to investigate or when you're not even investigating. My most incredible experience happened on a little round top shortly after dark.
Hmm.
My companion and I actually saw ghost soldiers intelligently interacting with us. It's mind blowing. Had I been alone, I would have thought I was hallucinating. But when I heard my companion describing what I'm also seeing, but there again, we weren't investigating.
So,
That wasn't our
uh,
purpose to be
tell
there at
tell
the
me more
time, so
about
we did
that.
not have equipment with us.
Tell me more about that.
Oh,
I'd love. Yeah.
it was incredible.
Hmm.
What brought us there? It's her name is Kat Gash. She's a published author. She is a very talented medium, and there are very good mediums out there. A lot
Hmm.
of them are not. Kat's very impressive. She's a good friend of my wife and I wanted to get her impressions at Little Round Top. She did not know about my family's history there or anything.
Hmm.
So we went to the Alabama Monument where the brigade lined up to attack Little Round Top. And as we're talking in front of the monument, I saw four semi transparent figures walking up toward us from behind her. And I was stunned. I mean, these were clearly soldiers with Confederate shell jackets, slouch hats, and weapons. And all of a sudden, Kat spun around and said, "Hey, don't sneak up on me like that." The figures that I saw backed up. She said there was a fifth one off to her side that kept going past us, but these reacted to her. And then she looked at me and saw my expression and said, "Oh, you see them too?" And she's professing to communicate with them. I have no reason to doubt her because she has told me some things that there's no way she could know. But she said they wanted us to leave. And I said, "Are they threatening us?" And she said, "No, they're concerned for us." And she felt a bit uncomfortable, and I wanted to go to Little Round Top proper, so we left. Although I hated to tear myself away from these figures standing there, semi-transparent. You could see arms, legs, hats. You could not make out facial features, or maybe the individual fingers, but the clear shape, the fact they had weapons was clear. Well, anyway, we get in the car, we drive around to Little Round Top proper, and we get out. And as we're standing there, we first saw a dark figure with a weapon kind of marching back and forth like a guard. And he's been reported before. He's called the Sentry, and he is supposedly a 20th Maine soldier.
Hmm.
But as we're watching this, we saw light colored figures start to kind of pop up or come out of the woods. These did not have weapons, but they kept approaching. And by the time that this was done, I'm guessing there were about 2 dozen of these figures, and they're coming toward us and gathering around us. They're not armed, but they're clearly in Confederate cut uniforms, slouch hats. Some had blanket rolls. One of them, he was only a few feet from me. Kat said she was getting from him that he was connected to me, and his name was Sam. I have no ancestors I'm aware of named Sam who were there. But she said he was very ragtag. I could clearly see him. One came about 2 feet from me, a very, very tall individual. And I turned and saw that, and I was quite surprised. And Kat said, "Well, he's a tall gomer, isn't he?" So
Hmm.
she's describing what I'm seeing. It was absolutely wild. Um, this went on for a while. She started getting very uncomfortable as they kept coming closer and more of them, and she wanted to leave, so we left. Did not have any equipment with us because we were not expecting any such thing. No
Hmm.
camera. I could have tried getting my phone out and filming it, but it was that didn't even really cross my mind. I was so dumbfounded by what I was seeing.
And it happened
It
very
was
fast.
pro-
When you were still back at the Alabama Monument, did she was interacting with them? Were you interacting with them as well?
No, other than seeing them. I mean, it's like they knew that we were present, but I'm getting nothing from them other than I can see them.
So
Um,
you couldn't hear her
I
their
didn't
interaction with her.
No, and the way she described it is kind of like not really hearing the voice, but an internal type conversation. Now, I will say on Little Round
Hmm.
Top proper, it got very, very, very cold. Um, and I realized it was cold, but I was so focused on the figures. The cat told me later that I was starting to shiver.
Really? Hmm. But you weren't
And
conscious
it
of
was
it
a
at the moment.
warm evening. It was a
Hmm.
very warm evening, too,
What
very
time of the
comfortable
evening
evening.
was it? What time of the evening was it?
It was, we had to leave by 10 because the park closed at 10. It was September, so we didn't have a lot of time. I think the sunset there is around maybe 8ish.
Mm-hmm.
So between 8 and 10 is when this took place.
Interesting. Interesting indeed. So have you made an attempt to research Sam in your own
I
genealogy?
have,
Mm-hmm.
and thus far I have not found anything, but sometimes the nicknames were commonly used too.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah. So it might not even be Samuel. It could be just a nickname that's, under an entirely different formal name. So,
or it could be a friend of one of my ancestors because none of my ancestors were killed at Gettysburg.
mm,
The ones who were there all survived.
well, and she said this Sam was connected to you. Did she explain in a family way, or maybe he was a
She
friend of
that
Captain Briggs? Who knows?
Yeah, he was telling, she said that he was imparting to her that he was connected with me and he was looking at me. And I knew which one was Sam out of this group. He was short, a touch on the stocky side. She could apparently see more details than I could because she said he was very raggedy, but
Mm,
I could see that he had on a short cut Confederate shell jacket and a slouch hat and a blanket roll,
mm. Was there any
but
other
no
tourists
weapon.
around? I guess at that hour
No,
yeah, there wouldn't have been too many around at that hour because the sun
at
was,
that hour,
yeah.
fortunately, we had it to ourselves. Now, I don't know if Cat's abilities as a medium help to track this because I've been to Little Round Top after dark many times and had no such thing happen.
Mm-hmm.
I've really, in my lifetime, never seen figures that clearly ever,
Mm-hmm. Now, does she go
other
to
than that
Gettysburg
time.
often? The medium? Does she go
She
to?
lives about less than an hour away.
So she
Yes.
visits there often enough, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that she'd be a great go-to person for your investigative journalism. You know. So that's a very interesting story. I'm glad I have the lights on where I'm at. So
It,
yeah, go ahead. I didn't
yeah,
mean to interrupt you.
I was really not frightened, and I don't know why. I was more intrigued than I
Mm-hmm.
was anything.
Yeah, it's funny. I was just scroll down a little bit on your page, and I see a comment on your book from Mark Nesbitt, and I was going to bring him up anyway because I don't know if he's the first person, but he's the one that everybody knows that writing the Ghost of Gettysburg. In fact, I think under his name there's a Ghost of Gettysburg tour in the town of Gettysburg. So you've met
There
him? Have you met
is.
Mark?
Mark has been very gracious to
Mm-hmm.
me. My wife and I met Mark. Actually, we were in Gettysburg visiting, and we just wanted to talk to Mark to get an insight into the events and experiences in our own house.
Mm-hmm.
And he was very gracious talking about it.
Mm-hmm.
And in the ensuing years, we've become friends. If I'm in town, I usually sign books at Mark's tour headquarters. He signs books every Saturday in Gettysburg, and if
Yeah,
I'm in
that's
town on Saturday, I'll sign with him. And
that's where my nephew and I
very
met him. Yeah,
knowledgeable gentleman.
yeah, he is. Have you ever read the Newt Gingrich wrote an alternative to Gettysburg book? Have you ever read that?
No, I've read some of Newt's works, but not that one.
Yeah, it's very annoying. Anyway, um, I like the the way it happened, not an alternative version. So you wrote I met a ghost at Gettysburg, and then you wrote um, I met a what was the name of the second book?
Yeah, I met more ghosts
There
at
it is. Okay,
Gettysburg.
yeah. So and the third one is going to be about a specific regiment.
The 107th Ohio, and the working title is Ghosts of Dishonor.
Mm.
This regiment was German. The Germans were very poorly thought of. And this particular regiment, that particular brigade, they were on the right flank of the Union Army at Chancellorsville. They got overrun. No human being alive could have held that position. And the exact same thing happened to them at Gettysburg on day one. Exactly the same thing. Nobody could have withstood that overwhelming attack. But yet, because they were German, they were denigrated. Their colonel, who actually was in Gettysburg, rallying just stragglers from all regiments, trying to put up a defense because he got separated from his men by the almshouse behind them from the bulk of his men. He was accused of being a coward and running away. He was acquitted, of course, at court martial because many people saw what he was doing. But that's just, they were treated very poorly because they were German. That's part of the focus of my book, as is then some of the paranormal things that led me to that regiment.
Yeah, they did develop an undeserved bad reputation for what happened on July 1st of 1863. Uh, there just wasn't enough Union soldiers there to put up a proper defense anyway. So a lot of the blame was it Francis Barlow was the commanding officer.
Yeah, he was a
Yeah,
division commander.
yeah. So he just had more to deal with than he could fight back with at the time. But they did get a bad
That was
yeah. It
It
was
was a terrible position. They were taken in flank and rear, basically.
right, and they just didn't have enough troops yet because the troops were still coming up to Gettysburg during the entire battle of the 1st of July, you know. So, but that's very interesting. That's a great, it seems like the I Met More Ghosts at Gettysburg would be a great transitional book to the one that you're going to be coming out with hopefully soon. So, but I
And
appreciate your
that's
time
great.
today. It was very interesting. Do you have any more encounters at Gettysburg?
Um, I have had some very interesting encounters during investigations there. At our friends, the basement of our friend's house that was a Confederate field hospital, there is a spirit who loves to talk to me on the ghost box. And every time that I investigate that basement, the spirit comes through. His name is Jackson. When I first met Jackson, I think I angered him. Was asking, anybody with us? Yes. Were you a soldier? Yes. Union or Confederate, rebel? I said, what unit are you in? He said, 34th Virginia. And I said, oh, infantry? And he said, no, cavalry, and then refused to deal with me anymore. The
Wow.
34th Virginia Battalion of Cavalry was present at that property. As a matter
Wow.
of fact, an officer's belt buckle with the numeral 34 brass belt buckle was found in the basement.
And where is this house?
But
On
this
Baltimore
is
Pike?
the old Sanders farm. It's outside of town.
Mm-hmm.
Would be I'm getting my directions here north and east
Ah,
of
okay.
Gettysburg. But
Mm.
Wade Hampton's cavalry was there, camped there after the Battle of Hunterstown near Gettysburg.
Mm. Interesting. But have you made up with him? Have you been able to talk to him
Yeah,
since? Yeah.
yes. As a matter of fact, I walked in when their investigation was going on. They were trying to contact him. He wouldn't talk, and as soon as I walked in, hi Jackson, hi Don, and
Yeah.
would communicate. And then one
Wow.
time I did that, I had to leave early. They're still investigating. As I walked up the basement stairs to leave, he said, "Goodbye, Don."
Wow.
Just incredible. We believe he was a camp servant to one of the Confederate officers in the 34th Virginia.
Hmm.
battalion.
And just for those who don't know, what is a ghost box? Can you explain it?
Um, Ghost box, spirit box, it's a form of instrumental transcommunication. Um, it's based on the concept of EVPs, where you use a recorder, get answers that you cannot hear with your ear, but they're recorded. You can play back and hear them. With this box, which basically scans radio stations to create white noise, it allows you to have real time communication with spirits.
Hmm.
And sometimes it can be quite effective what you get.
Hmm.
Some people tend to disparage them because a lot of times you do get very garbled answers, or people think it's some sort of interference. But when they're on, when they're working, and when you're getting clear responses, they are, to me, infallible.
So there's no way for someone, you had mentioned earlier, there's no way for someone with like a CB radio or something half a mile away to throw answers at you?
No, no, you just cannot.
Hmm. I can't believe. Well, let me ask you this: you were talking about the 20th Maine location. Was that video or audio recorded at all? No. Oh, you said you didn't even have time to take your phone out. Yeah.
No, we weren't even actually investigating. It just
Hmm.
was like, wow.
Hmm. Well, that's
Like I
that's.
do have I do have a very good recording from the 107th Ohio. I had mentioned the time that my wife took the photo when I had the EMF meter.
And you had the orders.
Later,
Yeah.
we were using a recorder asking questions, and my wife's asking questions, and she asked, "Are you proud of your German heritage?" She says, I'm German. I have German heritage, and I'm quite proud of that. Are you proud?" When we got back to the hotel room that night, when we played that back, we got a very clear "yeah" in answer to that question.
So you couldn't hear it in real time, but you can hear it in the playback.
Yeah, but you could and play it. But then again, we had a recorder, not a ghost box at that time.
Right. Well, this whole thing is very intriguing to me. I'm looking forward to reading both books and learning more about um, these things. I've been on. Just full disclosure. I've been on a few of those Ghosts of Gettysburg tours when I go to Gettysburg, and as you described it, it is like a touristy thing, but it's basically the tour guide is telling you stories, but you don't really personally experience anything. At least I've never. Maybe some people do.
Uh, so some people have said they do. I never have. I've been on a number of them, but
Hmm.
I think they're interesting.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, the whole town is interesting. When was the last time you were there?
Last fall, I think in October,
So you've
was my
seen all the
last
work
trip.
that the National Park Service, in conjunction with the American Battlefield Trust, have done for the restoration of.
I,
Yeah, they did a hell of a
yeah, I've been
job there.
following it now. Right now, Little Round Top is closed, as is Devil's Den for some restoration work.
Yeah, I heard they installed some steps on the rocks at the Devil's Den. So I guess people were getting hurt climbing up those big boulders there. But they did a phenomenal job with the where the cyclorama used to be, which was right on Cemetery Hill. They moved it away from there. It's a little further down. The entrance to the park, in fact, is a little further to the right. Um, I was amazed at how much work they did. They even took cleared trees that weren't there at the time and planted trees that were there at the time. They did a lot of extensive work. Yeah. So
It's made quite a transformation since I was first there.
yeah, yeah. Uh, but I certainly appreciate you coming on tonight. I was amazed at your stories, and anybody listening, I think, would want to check out Don's books. If you can go to excuse me, I met a ghost.com to see both his books are available there. Is it available anywhere else besides here? Is it available on Amazon?
Yeah, of course, Amazon. in bookstores. And if you prefer to buy books from a bookstore, if they don't have it in stock, they can order it in for you.
Right. Well, I'm
I
gonna
have other books that are not
I'm gonna
Civil
buy it right from
War
here. It seems like
related,
the
but at
easiest place.
fadedbanner.com is, yeah. But this is
Fadedbanner.com.
simple,
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, this is where I'm gonna buy them
Mhm.
right at the
Correct
end of
is
this
another.
conversation. So seems like the easiest place to get them at. So I'm looking forward to reading these and seeing the one about the Ohio Regiment when it comes out, and all of the works in the future. Um, I certainly appreciate your time tonight, Don.
Well, you're very welcome. Thanks for having me on.
All right, maybe have you further on down the road, maybe when that other book comes out.
That'd be great.
Yeah, I would. All right. Thank you, sir. Have a great evening.
You're welcome.